The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit without warning, its dark metallic hull blocking the sun like an eclipse. Across the globe, people stopped and stared at news feeds, showing the impossible vessel hovering silently above them. Commander. Kim stood in the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, his face illuminated by the blue glow of monitoring screens. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the room's cool air. Around him, military personnel rushed between stations, their voices a controlled chaos of reports and commands. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," announced a young communications officer, her fingers flying across her console. "Should I put it through?" Kim nodded grimly. "Let's hear what they have to say." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature unlike anything humans had seen before. It had smooth grey skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and what appeared to be breathing gills along its neck. This was Counselor Tech of the Navi Collective. People of Earth, the aliens spoke in perfectly translated speech, its voice oddly melodic yet cold. "Your planet has been noticed by the Collective. We require your immediate surrender and integration into our empire. Your resources and position are valuable. Your resistance is not." The room fell silent. Kim exchanged glances with General Ryu, who had gone pale. "Counselor," Kim replied carefully, "this is an unexpected contact. We would request time to consult with our global leadership before responding to such a significant demand." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "Your species' reputation for delay tactics precedes you. You have 48 Earth hours to submit your unconditional surrender." When the transmission ended, the room erupted in urgent discussion. President Wu was connected from the Seoul emergency bunker within minutes. "What are our options?" she asked, her calm voice belying the gravity of the situation. Defense Minister Park shook his head. "Their technology is beyond anything we've seen. Conventional military response would be ineffective. We need to understand what we're dealing with," suggested Dr. Lee, the chief scientist who had been rushed into the meeting. "Perhaps we can negotiate—" The alarm klaxons cut her off. A junior officer shouted over the noise, "They're firing! Target is the Lunar Research Station!" On screen, a beam of intense light shot from the alien vessel, connecting with the Moon's surface. The outpost, home to 32 international researchers, vanished in a flash that left nothing but a smoking crater. "Her demonstration," Kim whispered, horror washing over him. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. In homes and public squares, on phones and giant displays, humanity watched the footage play on repeat. The initial panic gave way to something else, a quiet, determined anger that united people across borders and beliefs. In Daejeon, South Korea, civilians lined up outside military recruitment centers. In farming communities, people gathered supplies as if preparing for disaster. Parents held their children closer that night, telling them everything would be okay while wondering if that was true. At an emergency United Nations session, representatives found unprecedented consensus. Ambassador Jun delivered Earth's response, with dignity and steel in her voice. "We cannot and will not surrender our home to threats and violence. Humanity rejects the collective's demands." The Navi's response came just hours later. A coastal weather station in New Zealand disappeared in the same flash of destructive light, taking 12 more lives. That evening, as Commander Kim watched, the sun set from his office window, his desk phone rang. It was Dr. Lee. "Commander, I've been analyzing the energy signature from their weapons," she said, excitement breaking through her exhaustion. "There's something unusual about the frequency pattern. I think we might have found a weakness." Kim straightened. "I'm listening. Their technology is advanced, but it operates on principles we can understand," she continued. "If we could disrupt the specific energy harmonics they use." For the first time since the massive ship appeared in the sky, Kim felt a spark of hope. Humanity had always been at its best when backed into a corner. Throughout history, humans had proven themselves adaptable, creative, and surprisingly resilient. The Na'vi clearly expected a conventional response, military mobilization, perhaps, desperate missile launches or attempts at diplomatic concessions. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. Kim picked up his secure line to President Wu. "Madam President, I need immediate authorization for Operation Firefly." and I need to speak with Engineer Kang at the Quantum Systems Lab. As darkness fell across the planet, lights burned late in laboratories, military bases, and government buildings. The Na'vi watched from orbit, scanning for signs of military movement, puzzled by the relative calm they detected. If they had studied human history more carefully, they might have recognized this quiet determination for what it was, the calm before the storm. What the aliens failed to understand was that humans had been imagining this scenario for centuries through books, films, and games. In a strange way, humanity had been preparing for this moment without knowing it, and now that it had arrived, people were adapting with remarkable speed. The Na'vi had made a critical error in their calculations. They had evaluated human technology, but failed to account for human ingenuity. They had measured human weapons, but overlooked human will. Most importantly, they had catalogued human weaknesses, but missed entirely what happened when humans united against a common threat. They would soon learn. Day 3 of the invasion, and still no missiles launched toward the alien ships. No fighter, jets scrambling to engage. No tanks rolling out of bases. The Na'vi surveillance systems detected only routine movement in human cities, though their sensors noted increased activity in certain government buildings and research facilities. Inside, his command vessel, Counselor Tech, studied the reports with growing irritation. "They must be planning something," he muttered to his second-in-command. "Scan deeper, find their military response." But the conventional attack never came. Instead, in a basement lab beneath Seoul National University, Professor Lee hadn't slept. In 36 hours. Her eyes were red-rimmed as she stared at energy patterns dancing across her screen. Around her, a team of physicists and engineers worked in focused silence, occasionally sharing data or passing notes. Coffee cups and empty food containers littered the tables. "There," she said suddenly, pointing to a pattern in the Na'vi shield frequency. "Every 93 seconds, there's a micro-fluctuation. If we can synchronize our pulse with that exact moment..." Across the world, similar scenes played out. In Tokyo, quantum computing specialists broke through the first layer of Na'vi communication encryption. In Bangalore, materials scientists examined fragments collected from the lunar attack site, discovering unusual properties in the alien alloys. In Silicon Valley, the world's top hackers worked alongside military cyber warfare experts, probing for weaknesses in the alien network. Meanwhile, as ordinary citizens watched the skies with dread, many took action in their own ways. Neighborhood watch groups organized supply chains. Retired engineers volunteered their expertise. Factory workers in Detroit, Busan, and Hamburg worked overtime as production lines were rapidly converted from civilian goods to components needed for the response plan. "They're not attacking," Tech observed on the 5th day, his confusion evident. "Their military bases show minimal activity." His tactical officer, Ren, offered a theory. "Perhaps they recognize the futility of resistance and are preparing surrender terms." Tech considered this. It seemed logical. After all, the Na'vi had conquered 12 different species, and all had eventually recognized the superiority of Na'vi technology. Why would humans be different? The call came from Engineer Kang at the Korean Aerospace Research Institute to General Bay's secure line. "The prototype works," Kang said, voice hushed but excited. "We can disrupt their shielding, but only for about 3 seconds." 3 seconds might be enough," the general replied. "How soon can you scale production?" "That's the beauty of it," Kang explained. "We designed it to use components from ordinary commercial electronics. Every tech company on the planet can help build these. We've already sent the encrypted specs to our partners. In Washington, London, Beijing, and dozens of other capitals, leadership had put aside old rivalries with surprising ease. Funny how quickly borders disappear when we're all facing extinction," President Wu observed during a global video conference. On screens around the table, heads of state nodded in agreement. The Emergency Earth Council had moved with unprecedented speed, coordinating the global response without the usual political posturing. "Australia's quantum lab confirms Professor Lee's findings," announced the Australian Prime Minister. "The disruption device works consistently in testing." "And the biological research?" asked President Wu. Promising, replied the director of the CDC. The Na'vi environmental suits have filtration systems we can potentially exploit. We just need samples to confirm. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Growing impatient with the human lack of response, the Na'vi destroyed a coastal weather station in New Zealand. But this time, a rapid response team was waiting nearby. As the dust settled, they moved in, collecting samples and a partially damaged piece of Na'vi technology. Dr. Han examined the recovered material with childlike wonder, despite the grim circumstances. Their biotech is advanced but fundamentally different from ours, she explained to the response team. Their immune systems have never encountered Earth microbes. That gives us an angle. Meanwhile, in homes across the planet, people prepared. They didn't panic or riot as disaster movies had always predicted. Instead, a strange calm determination settled over humanity. Parents explained to children why they might need to stay in basements or shelters. Neighbors checked on the elderly. Communities organized resource sharing. History books talk about how humans always fight among themselves, a young teacher told her online class during an emergency education broadcast. But they also show how we come together when it really matters. This is one of those times. On B, the 10th day, the Na'vi's patience ran out. Tech ordered the destruction of a small city in Portugal as final warning. The beam struck with terrible precision, leaving nothing but smoking ruins. Watching the footage, Commander Kim clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Are we ready?" he asked his communications officer. "Almost," she replied. "General Bay says the first wave of defense systems will be deployed in 48 hours. The disruption network needs just a little more time." Kim nodded, eyes still fixed on the destruction. "Then we give them what they expect. Tell President Wu we should offer to negotiate. We need to stall them just a little longer." As the message was transmitted to the Na'vi ship, Engineer Kang's team worked through the night, assembling the first batch of what they called Firefly devices, small, seemingly primitive drones that carried the shield-disrupting technology. The Na'vi, believing they were witnessing the beginning of human capitulation, never realized they had committed the greatest tactical error possible. They had given humanity time to adapt. And adaptation had always been humanity's greatest strength. Counselor Tech, confident in his imminent victory, agreed to delay the final attack for 48 hours to receive Earth's surrender terms. It would be the last mistake he would make. In this campaign, the small fleet of Earth vessels approached the massive Na'vi mothership, their engines giving off a soft blue glow against the blackness of space. From his command chair, Captain Song watched the distance counter tick down. His palms were sweaty inside his flight gloves, but his voice remained steady as he addressed the 23 ships under his command. "Remember your training. Stay in formation until the signal. After that, you know what to do." The ships were a mismatched collection: retrofitted weather satellites, modified space station modules, and hastily adapted civilian spacecraft. None were designed for combat. None would have stood a chance in a conventional battle. But this wasn't going to be conventional. Aboard the Na'vi command vessel, Sub-Commander Du reported to Counselor Tech with barely concealed amusement. "They've launched primitive vessels, Commander. Minimal shielding. No weapons signatures we can detect." Du brought up a magnified image on the main screen. "Shall we destroy them as a final demonstration before their surrender ceremony?" Tech studied the approaching fleet with four-eyed intensity. Something felt wrong. The humans had been clever so far, delaying and negotiating while showing no meaningful resistance. These ships seemed almost sacrificial. "Hold fire," Tech ordered. "Scan them thoroughly." The scan revealed nothing threatening. Simple propulsion systems, basic life support, minimal communication capabilities. The vessels continued their slow approach. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "these ships pose no threat to our defenses. Our analysis suggests they're merely observation platforms, perhaps to verify our capabilities before their leadership surrenders." Tech relaxed slightly. "Maintain position. Let them observe our superiority." What the Na'vi scanners failed to detect were the thousands of tiny fireflies nestled within each human vessel, devices no larger than a human hand, developed by Engineer Kang's team and mass-produced in factories across Earth. In mission. Control on Earth. Director Park watched tensely as the fleet reached the predetermined position. All vessels in range, a technician announced. Park took a deep breath. Captain Song, you have permission to deploy. In space, Song's voice came through clearly to his pilots. Launch Fireflies now! The sides of each human vessel opened like blooming flowers, releasing clouds of tiny darting objects. They moved with surprising speed, powered by miniaturized thrusters, spreading out in all directions toward the Na'vi fleet. What are those? Du demanded, suddenly alert. Scan again. Too small for detailed analysis, the sensor operator replied, his voice rising in pitch. They appear to be simple drones? Tech leaned forward, a creeping sense of unease growing. Defensive measures. Target and destroy them. The Na'vi ship's point defense systems activated, energy beams lancing out to intercept the approaching swarm. Some fireflies were hit, exploding in tiny flashes of light, but there were thousands and they moved in unpredictable patterns, making them difficult targets. They're surrounding our vessels, Doe reported, now genuinely concerned. What harm can they do? Tech asked dismissively. Our shields would withstand direct hits from their largest missiles. These are toys. The first firefly reached the shield perimeter of a Na'vi destroyer. Instead of exploding, it emitted a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse, exactly matching the microfluctuation in the Na'vi shield frequency that Professor Lee had discovered. For 3 brief seconds, a small section of the shield collapsed. That was all the time needed for the second wave of fireflies to dart through the opening, attaching themselves to the ship's hull. Multiple shield failures reported across the fleet, Du shouted, panic evident in his voice. The drones are penetrating our defenses. Tech stared in disbelief. Impossible. How could they? He never finished the sentence. At that moment, the fireflies attached to Na'vi ships activated their second function, releasing the tailored computer virus developed by the international team of hackers. It spread instantly through the ship's networked systems, encountering little resistance from alien security protocols that had never been designed to counter human coding techniques. Throughout the Na'vi fleet, systems began shutting down. Communication arrays went silent. Weapon targeting computers displayed gibberish. Life support switched to emergency backup. We're being hacked, the communications officer stated in disbelief. Our central network is compromised. In his command, Chair Tech fought to maintain control. Disconnect from the network. Switch to isolated systems. But the virus had been designed to leap across even air-gapped systems, using techniques developed by human cyber warfare experts who had spent decades perfecting such attacks against each other. In space, Captain Song watched with grim satisfaction as the mighty Na'vi vessels began drifting out of formation, their running lights flickering. Phase 1 successful, he reported to Earth. Moving to Phase 2. The human vessels now broke formation, each heading toward a designated Na'vi ship. From Earth's surface, larger vessels began launching, actual military spacecraft that had been held in reserve, waiting for this moment when the Na'vi ships would be at their most vulnerable. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Na'vi forces that had already landed found themselves facing an entirely different problem. Expecting to encounter organized military resistance, tanks, artillery, soldiers in formation, they instead found empty cities and deserted military bases. Where are their warriors? A Na'vi ground commander asked in frustration as his troops secured yet another abandoned human facility. The answer came in the form of scattered attacks from unexpected directions, civilian vehicles retrofitted with makeshift weapons, snipers firing from concealed positions and immediately relocating, infrastructure that seemed to malfunction in lethal ways whenever Na'vi troops approached. Dr. Han's biological countermeasure was deployed through modified crop-dusting drones that released a fine mist over Na'vi positions. The Earth microbes, specifically cultivated to target alien biology, began working their way through the filtration systems of the Na'vi environmental suits. By sunset, Na'vi ground forces were reporting mysterious system failures and unexpected health issues among the troops. Their superior strength and advanced weapons meant little against an enemy that refused to fight according to any recognizable rules of engagement. In orbit, the situation had become even more dire for the invaders. Captain Song's fleet had successfully deployed EMP devices against 13 Na'vi vessels. The military spacecraft from Earth were now attaching docking collars to the disabled ships. Boarding teams moved through the alien corridors, encountering sporadic resistance from Na'vi crews who had never trained for combat in their own vessels. They expected us to fight their way, Lieutenant Jin told his boarding team as they secured another section of a Na'vi cruiser. They never considered we'd fight our way. As reports of failures cascaded through what remained of the Na'vi command structure, Counselor Tech faced a horrifying realization. In all their previous conquests, they had never encountered a species like humans, adaptable, unpredictable, and terrifyingly creative when cornered. Counselor Tech stared at the holographic display showing the status of his once mighty invasion fleet. Red warning symbols flashed across nearly every vessel. His clawed hand trembled slightly as he wiped it across his face, a gesture he'd picked up from studying human behavior during mission preparation. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Impossible," he muttered, more to himself than to Sub-Commander, Du standing nervously nearby. How could they have countered our technology so quickly? 3 days had passed since the humans launched their unexpected counterattack. What had begun as a textbook invasion was now becoming something the Na'vi military had never experienced, a defeat. "The virus continues to spread through our systems," Doe reported, keeping his voice low so the increasingly agitated crew wouldn't overhear. "Our technicians can't isolate it. It adapts faster than they can respond." Tech slammed his fist on the command console. "These are primitives. They were launching chemical rockets just decades ago." "Yes, sir, but—" Du hesitated before continuing. "It appears we may have underestimated them. In the skies above what had been designated Landing Zone 3, a squad of Na'vi fighters attempted to provide air support for ground troops who had been cut off from their command post. The sleek alien aircraft moved with incredible speed and precision, their energy weapons far superior to anything in Earth's arsenal. Yet they were falling one by one. "I can't shake it," a Na'vi pilot shouted over the tactical channel as his craft spiraled toward the ground, systems failing. What had brought down the advanced fighter wasn't another aircraft, but a modified commercial drone carrying one of Engineer Kang's EMP devices. Thousands of these drones now patrolled Earth's skies, guided by teenagers using gaming controllers from the safety of underground bunkers. On the ground, Major Choi led a unit of special forces through the dense forest surrounding the Na'vi forward base. Her soldiers moved in perfect silence, their movements practiced and efficient. Unlike traditional military operations, they wore no uniforms, carried a mix of standard and improvised weapons, and operated with near-complete autonomy. "Remember," she whispered to the squad, "aim for the breathing apparatus at the neck junction. Dr. Han's analysis confirmed it's their weak point." The Na'vi ground commander, Officer Lim, had never felt fear in combat before. His species had evolved as apex predators, physically stronger than humans with natural armor and superior senses. Yet something about the way these humans fought disturbed him deeply. They didn't attack in formations. They didn't hold ground. They struck from nowhere, caused maximum damage and disappeared. "Secure the perimeter," he ordered, his voice betraying his growing anxiety. "They'll attack at dawn." But the humans didn't wait for dawn. They didn't operate on expected timetables or follow conventional tactics. Major Choi's team struck at midnight, when the Na'vi biological rhythms were at their lowest ebb, a fact discovered by Dr. Han's research team after studying captured specimens. Back in orbit, Commander Tech made a desperate decision. "We must contact the collective, request reinforcements." His voice had lost its earlier confidence. The communications officer turned from his station, mandibles clicking nervously. "Sir, we can't establish a connection. All long-range communication arrays have been compromised. Keep trying." Tech snapped. What Tech didn't know was that researcher Yoon and her team at the Korean Communications Agency had developed a method to block the specific subspace frequencies used by Na'vi transmitters. The humans had effectively isolated the invasion fleet, cutting them off from any hope of rescue. In a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Wu met with the Earth Defense Council. The room was simple, a long table, comfortable chairs, and walls lined with screens, showing real-time battle information from around the globe. "The tide is turning," General Bay reported, allowing himself a small smile. "Our forces have captured 3 Na'vi outposts in the last 12 hours. Their air support is diminishing, and ground troops are increasingly isolated." "And the civilian casualties?" President Wu asked, her focus unwavering even in the face of good news. "Minimal since the initial attacks," reported Health Director Park. "The evacuation protocols worked better than expected. In space, the humans had launched the most daring phase of their counterattack. Commander Min led a boarding party of 200 specially trained soldiers toward the Na'vi flagship. Their spacecraft, disguised as debris from earlier battles, drifted slowly toward the massive vessel. "Remember your training," Min told her team over the secure channel. "The Na'vi are physically stronger, but they evolved on a lower gravity world. Use that against them." When the boarding team breached the hull of the flagship, the Na'vi defenders responded with predictable tactics: direct confrontation, formation-based defense, concentrated firepower. They expected the physically smaller humans to follow similar protocols. Instead, Min's soldiers split into dozens of small teams, using the ship's own ventilation systems and maintenance tunnels to bypass defended areas. They employed flashbang grenades that exploited the Na'vi's sensitive eyesight and deployed sonic weapons tuned to frequencies that caused disorientation in the alien nervous system. The Na'vi crew, despite their superior strength and advanced weapons, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Hand-to-hand combat, which should have favored the physically stronger aliens, instead revealed another miscalculation. The humans, having trained in Earth's higher gravity all their lives, moved with unexpected speed and power in the ship's artificial gravity. On the bridge, Tech received increasingly desperate reports as sections of the flagship fell to the human borders. "Sir," Doe said urgently, "they're approaching the command deck. We should evacuate to the escape pods." Tech stared at his second-in-command with all 4 eyes narrowed in anger. "We do not retreat. We are Na'vi warriors." The bridge doors exploded. Inward and smoke filled the command center. Through the haze, Commander Min led her team onto the bridge, weapons raised but not firing. "Counselor Tech," she said calmly, "your invasion has failed. I suggest you order your remaining forces to stand down before more lives are lost, yours included." Tech stared at the human soldier with a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. His species had conquered 12 worlds by following the same successful strategy each time: overwhelming technological superiority, predictable military opposition, and eventual submission of the target species. Nothing in Na'vi military history had prepared them for humans. "You should have researched us better," Min continued, seeming to read his thoughts. "Humans don't surrender. We adapt." As Tech looked around at his defeated bridge crew, he realized the humans spoke the truth. The Na'vi had made a fatal error. They had judged humanity by its technology, not by its nature. They had seen the divisions between nations and assumed disunity. They had calculated human military strength, but failed entirely to account for human ingenuity. With a gesture of resignation, Tech activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All Na'vi forces," he said, his voice heavy with defeat, "stand down, I repeat, stand down." 3 months after the surrender of the last Na'vi stronghold, the Grand Hall of the United Nations in Geneva buzzed with excitement. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the faces of representatives from every nation on Earth. The room had been expanded to accommodate additional delegates, including scientists, military leaders, and civilians who had played key roles in humanity's unexpected victory. Director Park stood at the podium, a holographic display hovering beside him showing the schematics of a Na'vi starship. Despite the dark circles under his eyes from months of non-stop work, his voice was strong and clear. "The reverse engineering process is ahead of schedule," he announced, rotating the hologram with a gesture. "We've deciphered approximately 60% of their propulsion technology and 40% of their weapons systems." President Wu, now serving as the chair of the newly formed United Earth Council, nodded approvingly. "And the communications array?" "That's been our biggest breakthrough," Park replied with undisguised pride. Thanks to researcher Yoon's team, we can now access the Na'vi Galactic Communication Network. We're picking up transmissions from at least 17 other spacefaring civilizations. A murmur ran through the assembly. For millennia, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew the answer was a resounding no, and more importantly, they had earned their place among the stars, not through peaceful contact, but by successfully defending their home. In a secure facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Professor Lee supervised the examination of the Na'vi flagship's data core. The captured vessel had yielded a treasure trove of information about the wider galactic community, most of which humanity had been completely unaware of until now. It's like finding a library when you didn't even know books existed, she told her team as they sorted through the alien encyclopedia. According to this, there's something called the Galactic Assembly, a coalition of advanced civilizations that governs interstellar relations. Her assistant looked up from his terminal. Do the Na'vi belong to this assembly? Yes, Lee said, frowning slightly. They're listed as enforcement agents, basically the military arm for dealing with primitive worlds like us, the assistant said quietly. Lee nodded. Like us, or at least what they thought we were. Across the globe, humanity was changing in ways both subtle and profound. Children played with toys modeled after the ships that had defended Earth. University enrollment in physics, engineering, and xenobiology had tripled. Former rivals on the global stage now collaborated on joint projects, the old borders and conflicts seeming increasingly trivial in the face of what they now knew existed beyond their world. In what had once been a Na'vi command post in the Siberian wilderness, Engineer Kang supervised the integration of alien technology with human systems. His team had grown from a handful of Korean aerospace engineers to hundreds of specialists from dozens of countries. The materials are the key, he explained, to a group of visiting officials holding up a piece of the distinctive Na'vi metal alloy. So it's not just advanced, it's designed at the molecular level for specific properties. Once we understood that principle, we could begin adapting our manufacturing. A Russian physicist raised her hand. But surely it will take decades to reproduce their level of technology. Kang smiled. That's what makes this situation unique. We don't need to follow their development path. We can combine their knowledge with our own approaches. He gestured to a prototype vehicle in the corner of the hangar. This uses Na'vi propulsion principles, but with our own control systems they never considered, because they think differently than we do. 6 months to the day after the invasion began, the United Earth Council voted unanimously to send a delegation to the Galactic Assembly. The decision wasn't made lightly. Some argued humanity should focus on strengthening defenses before revealing themselves further. Others insisted that isolation would only lead to another invasion, perhaps by an even more powerful species. We go as equals, not as supplicants, Council President June declared to global applause. We have earned our place at that table. The ship chosen for this historic journey was the Phoenix, a hybrid vessel incorporating both human design and captured Na'vi technology. Its crew represented every continent, chosen for their expertise rather than political connections. On the day of launch, billions watched on screens around the world as the sleek craft rose from its pad in New Zealand, its engines glowing with an otherworldly blue light as it accelerated toward the stars. Commander Min stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching Earth shrink behind them. After leading the boarding party that captured the Na'vi flagship, she had been the unanimous choice to command humanity's first official interstellar mission. Navigation confirms we're on course, reported her pilot. The Na'vi star charts match our calculations perfectly. In the secure holding area near the back of the ship, former Counselor Tech sat in contemplative silence. The decision to bring him had been controversial but ultimately practical. He knew the protocols of the assembly and could guide the humans through their initial contact. We're approaching the jump point, Min informed him during her daily visit. Your assembly will soon know we're coming. Tech looked up at her with all 4 eyes blinking in sequence. A gesture Min had learned indicated deep thought. They already know, he said quietly. News of our failure spread quickly. The Assembly has never encountered a species like yours before. And how do you think they'll respond? Min asked. Tech made a gesture that approximated a human shrug. The Assembly fears the unknown. Your victory was unexpected, unprecedented. 3 days later, the Phoenix decelerated into orbit around a massive space station, the headquarters of the Galactic Assembly. It dwarfed any structure humans had ever built, a spinning wheel of light and metal housing representatives from dozens of spacefaring civilizations. As the human delegation prepared to board, Min visited Tech one final time. Any last advice before we meet your assembly? The former invasion commander considered for a moment. Be yourselves, he finally said. That is what makes you dangerous. That is what makes you valuable. The reception chamber of the assembly fell silent as the human delegation entered. Representatives of 12 advanced species watched with a mixture of curiosity, caution, and thinly veiled concern as President June led her team forward. At his request, Tech walked beside them, his presence causing visible surprise among the assembly members. When invited to address the gathering, Tech stepped forward. His once proud stance was humbler now, but his voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. Honored representatives, you see before you the species that defeated the collective's finest invasion force. They look soft. Their world has breathable atmospheres. Their bodies break easily. He paused, looking directly at the Geronian delegates, known for their territorial ambitions, but never ever make them angry. As murmurs spread through the chamber and other expansionist empires exchanged concerned glances, humanity took its first confident steps into a much larger universe. A species that had proven itself not through conquest, but by refusing to be conquered. Lieutenant Park informed me of this access point before our deployment, Tay continued. Her actions directly resulted in the success of Operation Firestorm and the survival of my entire team. That doesn't change the fact that she committed treason, Admiral Kang stated flatly. Doesn't it? General Wilson stepped forward. Our alliance has been built on sharing only what each side considers necessary, holding back crucial information out of distrust. And where has it gotten us? 6 years of stalemate against an enemy that keeps advancing. One of the tribunal members leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing, General? Full integration, Wilson replied simply. Not just coordinated, but combined forces. Real trust, not just diplomatic language. And as a first step, dropping all charges against Lieutenant Park. Admiral Kang's face darkened. You dare to dictate terms of our internal... It's not a dictation, Wilson interrupted. It's a recognition that Lieutenant Park demonstrated exactly the kind of courage and moral clarity that both our forces need. She didn't just save Sergeant Kim's team, she saved the integrity of our alliance. The tribunal called for a recess, leaving Jisoo alone in the chamber with Tay and the human officers. When the others moved to give them privacy, Tay approached her table, his movements careful due to his injuries. You shouldn't have come, Jisoo said quietly. It won't change. Their minds. Maybe not today, Tay agreed. But they need to hear the truth even if they don't like it. Jisoo studied his face, noting new scars along his temple and jaw. The mission succeeded. Because of you. Tay's voice softened. We found the access tunnel exactly where you said it would be. Without that information, none of us would have made it back. And now you're a hero, she observed, while you're facing exile. Tay shook his head. How is that justice? Jisoo allowed herself a small smile. Justice is a human concept. My people prefer balance. And there is a certain balance to this. Outcome. You live, I lose my position. An equation with both sides satisfied. I don't accept that equation, Tay said firmly, and neither does General Wilson. Before she could respond, the tribunal members returned. Their expressions gave nothing away as they took their seats. Admiral Kang glanced at a datapad before addressing the room. After consideration and consultation with our human allies, this tribunal has reached a decision. His tone made it clear he wasn't pleased with whatever had transpired during their recess. Lieutenant Jisoo Park, for the crime of sharing classified intelligence with unauthorized personnel, you are hereby stripped of your rank and removed from active military service. Jisoo accepted the verdict with a slight nod. She had expected nothing less. However, the Admiral continued reluctantly, in recognition of the unusual circumstances and the tactical value of your actions, your exile is suspended. Instead, you will be reassigned. This was unexpected. Jisoo straightened, confused by this deviation from standard protocol. Reassigned where, Admiral? To a new joint task force, Admiral Kang replied, each word seemingly painful to speak. A pilot program for fully integrated human alliance operations. General. Wilson stepped forward. The success of Operation Firestorm has convinced both our high commands that our traditional approach isn't working. We need something new. Soldiers who can work across cultural boundaries, who understand both human adaptability and alliance precision. And who better to help build that bridge than the two who've already crossed it, Tae added quietly. The implications slowly dawned on Jisoo. Not exile, but a new beginning. Not disgrace, but a chance to create something unprecedented. And most surprisingly, not separation from Tae, but assignment alongside him. Report to Outpost Horizon in 3 days, Admiral Kang concluded. Further details are classified pending. Your acceptance of this reassignment. His eyes narrowed slightly. Do you accept these terms, Lieutenant? Yes, Admiral, Jisoo replied, working to keep her voice steady despite the unexpected turn of events. As the tribunal adjourned, officers filed out in clusters, many casting curious glances back at Jisoo and Tae. Captain Hoon approached briefly, his expression unreadable. It seems you made the right choice after all, he said quietly, though not for the reasons I expected. The right choice is rarely the easy one, Jisoo replied. It was something her father had often said, though she'd never fully understood its meaning until now. Hoon nodded, a hint of something like respect in his eyes, before he turned to join the departing officers. Left alone in the chamber, Tae, finally, allowed himself to sit, wincing slightly as he settled beside Jisoo. So, he said with a tentative smile, Outpost Horizon. A remote station on the edge of known space, Jisoo noted. Far from both our homeworlds. Far from interference, Tae corrected. A place where we can build something new without constant scrutiny. Jisoo considered this. You realize the complexity of what they're asking? Finding common ground between two fundamentally different approaches to warfare, to life itself. I think we've already proven it's possible. Tae's hand found hers on the table between them, warm and solid and real. Besides, I can think of worse assignments than being stationed with you at the edge of the galaxy. 3 weeks later, Jisoo stood on the observation deck of Outpost Horizon, watching as the first integrated squad completed their training exercise. Below, human and Alliance soldiers moved together through a simulated hive environment, each compensating for the other's weaknesses, building on each other's strengths. At the center of the group, a human corporal shared a brief laugh with an Alliance tactical officer, the kind of casual interaction that would have been unthinkable months ago. They're adapting faster than expected, Tae observed, coming to stand beside her. As co-leaders of the program, they had spent every waking hour developing training protocols that balanced human intuition with Alliance precision. Adaptation is something both our species excel at, in different ways, Jisoo replied. Perhaps that's the real lesson here. Tae studied her profile in the dim light. Having second thoughts about your choice? Jisoo turned to face him fully. Here on Horizon, far from the rigid protocols of her people and the expectations of his, she had gradually allowed herself more freedom, not just in her decisions but in her emotions. The careful restraint she had maintained all her life had slowly given way to something richer, deeper, more complete. No, she said with quiet certainty. No second thoughts. Outside the viewport, stars streamed past as the station maintained its orbit on the boundary between known space and the vast unexplored regions beyond. A fitting location, Jisoo thought, for the new paradigm they were building, one that existed in the space between cultures, between traditions, between worlds. Later that evening, as they reviewed the day's training footage in Tae's quarters, Jisoo found herself watching him instead of the screens. The human who had carried her from a battlefield, who had shared music and food and stories, who had risked everything based on intelligence she had provided, and who had then returned to fight for her when she faced the consequences. What? Tay asked, noticing her gaze. I was just thinking about optimal tactical formations, she replied, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. She had indeed been thinking about formations, but of a different kind. The formation of bonds between different peoples, the formation of new ways of thinking, and most personally, the formation of something between herself and this human that defied her people's careful categories. Always the tactician, Tay laughed, reaching over to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture that still sent an unexpected warmth through her. Not always, Jisoo admitted, leaning into his touch. Sometimes I'm just grateful that you're terrible at following orders. Tay's smile widened. And sometimes I'm grateful that you decided some rules are worth breaking. As reports from the front lines began showing the first victories of their integrated teams against the Hive, Jisoo realized they were building more than a new military strategy. They were creating a template for something her logical mind had once considered impossible, a future where different worlds could come together, not despite their differences, but because of them, each bringing what the other lacked, and at the heart of it all was the most improbable equation of all, that a human soldier and an alliance officer could find in each other not just respect or admiration, but love, a force that, like the best, tactical advantages had appeared precisely when and where it was least expected.